Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for the report launch on the Socio-Economic Review of Black Muslim Population. I am thrilled that you are here today for this particular launch. We especially want to thank the Black Muslim Initiative for all of their work to support Black Muslim communities across the country. At this point, I'd like to invite our special guest to introduce us and to offer some welcome remarks. At this point, I'd like to invite Ariel, if you could say a few words.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ariel Kaibaka. I'm the Member of Parliament for London West. I'm actually joining you today from London, which is situated on the territory of the Attainment, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee people. And as the chair of the Liberal Caucus, Black Caucus, I have the opportunity to engage with Black communities across Canada. I get to have conversations about their lived experiences, their needs, hopes of Black Canadians from across the country. So it's a pleasure for me to have various communities and stakeholders that share with us, with the government, the important issues that pertain to their communities so that we can better represent them in Ottawa. And one of the many things that I hear often is the need for research into existence and experiences of Black Canadians across the country. And this really helps us to make informed policy, to make the right funding decisions, and a lot more. So we already begun to work on collecting disaggregated data, and as we expand in all sectors, this will continue to help us make informed decisions with the data to back it up. I'd like to thank the Black Muslim Institute, Ted Rogers School of Management, and the Diversity Institute for dedicating themselves to researching the lives of Black Muslim people in Canada. Hopefully today's conversation is the first of many that will help us understand the needs of Black Muslims and how we can best support them within our communities. There are many things that stood out to me in this report, but I'll mention just a couple. I noticed a difference in experiences between Black Muslim people, Black people, and Muslim people. The same for Black Muslim men versus Black Muslim women. In the report, it was highlighted that a lower proportion of Black Muslim women obtained certificate degrees or diplomas than Black Muslim men. And I'm really interested in figuring out how we can best support Muslim women in making the strides in this area. I also noticed that 62.9% of Black Muslim families make an annual household income of under $60,000, as opposed to the general population of whom 30.3% earn an annual household income of under $60,000. This means that Black Muslim individuals are overrepresented in these lower income jobs by a wide margin. And I think the question needs to be posed, what can we do to elevate Black Muslim individuals to higher income positions so that they are on the same playing field as the rest of Canada? So for me, I'm really looking forward to listening. It's important that we acknowledge the intersectionality, those with intersecting identities like Black Muslim people or with different gender identities, experiences, they experience life significantly different. And if I can take away one thing from this report, which by the way is not news to me, is the socioeconomic status of Black Muslims that vary greatly from the general population in this data, but it also helps us find ways that we can begin and continue to support Black women and Black women in the Muslim community and across the country. I think that it's important that our government continues to recognize the unique challenges that are faced by Black Canadians with intersections, including Black Muslim Canadians. And I'm hopeful that the work that has already begun, we can continue to build on that. We can continue to build on key investments that change people's lives. So the goal here is to empower Black and Afro-descendant communities by investing in social economic initiatives, and as well as making Canada safer for all Black people, but including Black Muslims who are disproportionately impacted by this. So I look forward to this continued discussion, but with the data that we have today, I think that our job in advocating is greatly improved. So allow me to thank you for all the work that you've invested in this research, and thank you for sharing with us. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. And I want to begin by just stating that for the next 15 minutes or so, I will be presenting on some of the key highlights from the report. We will be sharing this report on the Diversity Institute website, and we'll put a link up shortly once it's ready for you, so you can dig deeper into the report itself. And once I finish the report highlights, we'll have a panel moderated after to discuss some of the issues that were found in the report. So without further ado, I'll share my screen. I hope all of you will be able to see the screen. Are you able to see the screen?
Yep.
Great. Thank you so much. As I mentioned earlier, I'll begin by just talking a little bit about the Diversity Institute. The Diversity Institute undertakes research to advance diversity and inclusion in the workplace. We have been around for almost 25 years now. We're based at the Ted Rogers School of Management. And in addition to our work, including projects like Diversity Leads, which looks at representation across management, we've also have worked with, we're one of the ecosystem partners for the 50/30 Challenge. We're the research leads for the Future Skills Center, and also the home of the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. This particular project, personally speaking, is very much something that I always wanted to work on, including building on our previous work, the Black Experience Project, which was released about 5 years ago now. Having said that, our partner in this particular endeavor was the Black Muslim Initiative, which is a grassroots organization dedicated to understanding issues of experienced by Black Muslim population. This includes developing educational initiatives to raise awareness, collaborating with like-minded organizations, providing resources to support Black Muslim population. So before getting into the details about this report, we do want to highlight that Statistics Canada census from 2021 recently updated some of these figures and data, but we want to share some of those data. They were not ready for this particular report, but I think they highlight some of the key similarities and trends that we noticed in this particular report. Not all data is disaggregated at this moment, so the intersectional experience, but we do know overall the Black population comprises of about 4.3% of the population in Canada. The population is diverse, as alluded to by the Member of Parliament in the opening remarks. There are about 300 different ethnic, cultural origins, including African, Jamaican, Haitian, and over 450 mother tongue languages. Despite this, 16% of Black workers with bachelor's degree or higher from a Canadian institution worked in occupations that require high school diploma or less. So this might allude to some of the barriers that they might have faced. Having said that, we have also updates on the Muslim population specifically. In 20 years, the share of the Muslim population in Canada has more than doubled, up from 2% in 2001 to about 4.9% in 2021. About 19%, or 18.9% to be exact, of immigrants admitted from 2011 to 2021 reported being Muslim. Ontario posted the highest percentage of Muslim people, about 6.7%. We also know that 11.9% of Black Muslim population reported being Muslim. So the literature highlights that Black and Muslim individuals experience racism and Islamophobia, whether it be in the housing market, in the immigration process, or in other experiences. In particular, anti-Black racism and Islamophobia are prevalent within education and employment experiences. As I mentioned, the Black Experience Project, which surveyed 1,500 Black individuals in the Greater Toronto Area, of those, 23% of respondents noted that they downplayed being Black in work situations. About a third of participants identified this challenge in navigating anti-Black racism in the workplace, including having their competencies questioned. A study of Canadian Muslim students found that participants experienced various forms of Islamophobia, experienced anti-Muslim biases, and felt uncomfortable or isolated in classroom environments, among other experiences. Study with Muslim women in Waterloo, Ontario found experiences with gendered Islamophobia, including employers not recognizing their educational credentials or prior work experience. This report in particular, Socio-Economic Review of Black Muslim Population in Canada, was developed in partnership between the Black Muslim Initiative and the Diversity Institute. The report uses two datasets, the 2011 National Household Survey and the 2020 General Household Survey. The report focuses on the following sections: demographic characteristics, immigration and citizenship, home life and relationships, education, employment and income, and engagement activities. The report is largely quantitative and, where possible, provides an understanding of the experiences of Black Muslim women and individuals of different ages, as well as comparison between Black Muslim population, the Black population, and the Muslim population, and finally, the general population. I'll walk you through some of the major findings of the report and encourage you to read through for additional findings and nuances. In terms of the general demographic, about 0.3 to 0.5% of the population. Most of the population are adults with small senior population. About 3.2% of the Black Muslim population identifies as part of the LGBTQ2+ community. About 15.5% reported living with a disability. This is considerably lower than the general population. More Black Muslim women reported living with a disability than men. When we're looking at languages, most speak non-official languages as their mother tongue, with Afro-Asiatic languages being the predominant type of language spoken. Like the rest of the country, most live in Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta, with high proportions living in big cities like Toronto and Montreal. Most of the Black Muslim population are Canadian by naturalization and are considered to be first-generation Canadians. Most immigrants are aged 15 plus. Most non-immigrants are aged 0 to 14. The primary region of birth of Black Muslim population is Eastern Africa. About half, 51.2%, entered Canada as refugee, followed by economic migrant. The majority who immigrated did so from 1995 and 1999, and then 2010 onwards. The data in our report reveals potential immigration patterns. Most individuals are immigrants, potentially entering as refugees and coming to Canada during periods of civil strife in Africa. Further, many individuals came to Canada as adults and have kids once settled. here we can see that the different immigration patterns between the Black Muslim population and the general population, where the general population primarily entered Canada prior to 1984, and Black Muslim population entered in two clear periods between 1995, 1999, and then 2010 onwards. In this particular chart, you can see immigration patterns by age, where we see that most individuals of 0 to 14 are non-immigrants. Much of the Black Muslim population is not married, which is opposite from the general population. Fewer Black Muslim individuals are married or living in common law relationships, and slightly more are divorced or widowed compared to the general population. Most Black Muslim individuals live in households of 7+ people versus the general population. Most live in apartments versus the general population that live in single detached homes. A little over a quarter, 25.8%, own a dwelling versus 75.2% of the general population. And slightly below a quarter live in subsidized dwelling, higher than general population, Muslim population, and the Black population in general. This graph represents size of whole household according to the General Social Survey, and you can see that most of the Black Muslim population has households of 7, 5, and 4 people, which differs from the general population. There are also information on home subsidization. On the left, we have Black Muslim population compared to the general population, and on the left is the Black Muslim population compared to Black and Muslim populations. In both cases, the Black Muslim population are more likely to live in subsidized dwelling. Higher educational attainment varies between data sets, which may be due to different sample sizes or sample sizes themselves, and may be the result of changes over time. However, both highlight fewer Black Muslim individuals have earned certification, degree, diploma, less than a high school or trades degree compared to the general population. Most of the population studies education, visual and performing arts, communication technologies, humanities, or social and behavioral sciences. There are differences between women and men aged 20 to 34 who are more likely to have college CJEP other than non-university degrees or bachelor degrees than older women and men. And so these particular trend lines, you can see the educational experiences of Black Muslim men. A similar pattern persists with a higher proportion of men aged 24 to 30. More Black Muslim individuals study in the fields of education and arts compared to the Black and Muslim population, followed by studying fields of physical and life sciences. However, this is less than the other populations themselves. The employment experiences of Black Muslim population vary between data sets. Again, the different samples and studies, and there's no clear trend line or changes over time. But what we can find from this is, despite these differences, the data sets show us that higher proportion of the Black Muslim population are unemployed compared to the general population. The data sets also show Black Muslim population has a higher unemployment rate compared to the general population. Most of the Black Muslim population works in sales and services, which is higher than the general population. We have information on other sectors. Black Muslim population works compared to the general population. You can see that most of the Black Muslim population works in sales and services. This is slightly similar to the general population, with a few minor tweaks. The general population works in business and finance, followed by sales and services, and then trades and transport. The differences persist within the Black Muslim population, where more women than men work in sales and services and health, and more men than women work in trades and transport. Turning to the household income, we have this data set from both the NHS and the GSS, where Black Muslim individuals are overrepresented in lower income categories and underrepresented in higher ones compared to the general population. This pattern is consistent with the GSS sample. As I mentioned, we see much of the lower proportion of Black Muslim families earning over 100,000 compared to the general population. Only the General Social Survey offered us data on voter turnout and engagement in organization. Higher proportions of Black Muslim individuals, 18 to 29, voted in the last federal and provincial elections compared to the general population. Interestingly, about 76.4% of Black Muslim individuals aged 50 plus volunteered in groups they participated in. This is higher than youth, 30.9%. Additional findings are available in the report as well. So, as mentioned, we will be placing this full report. I feel like I breezed through a lot of data and information in about 10-15 minutes. So I hope you have a chance to look at the report itself. I'd like to turn it over to Kofi for the panel discussion, and we'll save some time to answer your questions as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mohammed. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. And welcome to everybody who's joined us today for this report. First and foremost, I want to say another sort of special thanks to MP Ariel Kayabaga for joining us today. She is, of course, an important person for us to have at this conversation, given the role that she plays at the federal level. We're very honored to have her here. I'm going to quickly introduce some of our guests that are joining us here on our panel discussion. I would also be remiss if I were not to mention that we seem to be missing Brother Ibrahim Downey. That might have something to do with the fact that he's in Malaysia at the moment. So he may be experiencing some technical difficulties, and there's about an 11-12 hour time difference between us and Malaysia. So hopefully he'll join us at some point. If not, we'll make sure to let him know how it went. So I'll just do very, very briefly some quick introductions of our panelists, and also allow them to introduce themselves. But before that, I'll just want to read very quickly. The Black Muslim Initiative is a nonprofit organization based in Toronto, Canada, that works to address issues at the intersection of anti-Black racism and Islamophobia. As an organization, we acknowledge that we are first and foremost situated on traditional territories of many First Nations peoples, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and many diverse nations, Inuit and Métis people. We also acknowledge we are members of a diverse community that benefits from the historical and continued legacies of many Black peoples, Muslim and otherwise, whose ancestors struggled and endured the horrors of the European Atlantic slave trade, and whose suffering and sacrifices have facilitated opportunities we have to exist and live freely in this land. Launched in March 2018 by volunteers within the Black Muslim community, BMI has been primarily focused on developing responses and solutions in the areas of education, advocacy, and resource development on behalf of individuals and families that form the growing demographic of the Black Muslims in Canada. We are a subset of the broader Muslim and Black communities in Canada, a minority within a minority, and of course with unique challenges and concerns that require ongoing attention and analysis. We are very excited about this report because it forms part of an ongoing series of research reports that we've been producing with various partners. We're very excited about the opportunity we had to have partnered with the Diversity Institute, principally because we know the tremendous work that they've done in the past as it pertains to Black communities and Muslim communities. And as Mohammed referenced, the Black Experience Report was a seminal report for some of the work that later on was introduced, and advocacy and policy work that was introduced into various communities at various levels of government. So without further ado, I'll do a very quick introduction of some of my panelists. So if I'll start with Idil. Idil Omar Kader Khalif has been a director of a nonprofit organization, a sociologist, and a youth coach for over 15 years. For more than a decade, she has worked in various community and public organizations. Born in Djibouti and a proud child of the Little Burgundy neighborhood, she has lived in Quebec for more than 30 years. Carrying strong African, Black, and diasporic identities, Idil is sensitive to issues related to racism, immigration, and access to a better quality of life for all. As a community worker, director, and sociologist who's used to work for / with Black populations that have too often been marginalized, Idil's professional perspective is strongly informed by her own unique diasporic experience. A former collaborator at the research chair on social inequalities and life's courses at the University of Montreal, and co-founder of the Black Muslim Women in Quebec collective, she supports efforts that aim at deeper understanding of anti-Black racism, sexism, and/or Islamophobia in Quebec and elsewhere. Her love for her different communities is above all expressed through a focused and pragmatic approach to action. We welcome Idil to joining us today. Idil, feel free as well. We have various people joining us who are also bilingual or fluent in French. So if you feel free at any point to make any comments en français. Idil, I will give you another chance to sort of introduce yourself a bit later, but are there any words you'd like to share about your work at this point?
Salam, bonjour. Bonjour, hi. Hi, everyone. I'll try to be short because I know we don't have much time, but I want to say that I am very, I think the word is proud when I get many invitations to take part in conversations. And when I received the email for this conversation, I was just dancing on my office chair. It made me very happy. So just like it was said, I'm a sociologist, I'm a consultant. I studied in French here in Quebec. I think it's very important that I say that my parents arrived here in Quebec more than 35 years ago. And so I think that, beyond my titles, I want to say something regarding the history of the journey of my parents here in Quebec, because without them, I think the legacy for me would not make sense. It's very important. When I read the report, I just realized, I thought about my father. When I read the data regarding Black Muslim people who were here in Quebec, in Canada, in the 1980s, beginning of the 1980s, my father was one of the first Black Muslim men to graduate from a French university here in Quebec. And my mother as well graduated from a French university here in Quebec and spent 25 years of her life teaching white people how to speak French properly. So we're talking about 35 years of work, of professional work, lifted by Black Muslim people. And so I just want to say to you all that this work, it's bigger than us. I know you know that, but it's really truly bigger than us. I had the privilege of benefiting from their presence, the presence of my parents in my life, and seeing them advocate for more than 35 years here in Canada. And so I benefited from that. I was pushed by them. And so I became a sociologist, and I evolved in the nonprofit sector for more than 15 years, pushing for many things. Here in Quebec, the context when it comes to Black Muslim people, Muslim people in general, I have to say, it is very intense, sociologically, politically, economically. And je vais parler un peu en français pour les personnes qui parlent en français. I am also the co-founder of Femmes Noires Musulmanes au Québec, which translates into Black Muslim Women in Quebec. J'ai créé le collectif Femmes Noires Musulmanes au Québec en 2018, suite à la présentation du projet de loi 21. Donc, avec des femmes noires musulmanes, en 2018, nous nous sommes organisés autour de la résistance et de l'objection face à ce projet de loi 21 qui malheureusement est devenu une loi ici au Québec qui empêche les personnes qui portent un signe religieux, c'est-à-dire surtout les femmes musulmanes qui portent le voile, de travailler dans certains secteurs d'activité professionnelle. Et donc, this bill that actually became a law reinforced full discrimination, especially for Black Muslim women wearing the hijab that could not work in certain sector. In 2018, me and many other Black Muslim women gathered and created this collective, and we created spaces to advocate and to make sure that Black Muslim women were evolving in wellness, evolving in well-being, and we're at the center of the conversation. I'm very proud to say that I pushed for this collective. Obviously, the pandemic slowed the world down, and so it slowed our collective a little bit, but we're very proud of the work that was done through this collective. Now, I'll try to make it very short, but I have so many things to say regarding our presence here in Canada, and so many things are being done. I'm working myself on a research that focuses on the experiences of Black Muslim women here in Quebec. And so my focus is really truly at the intersection of being Black, a woman, and Muslim. And I am running interviews with Black Muslim women who have lived experiences here in Quebec and who are talking about everything that matters to them, which is their professional journey, their family, their friendships, and how evolving in the context of Quebec is affecting also their wallets, the socioeconomics of Black Muslim women. And so I'll leave it at that. All I'll say is that I am very happy to be here. I thank you for the invitation. And I will say one thing, French and English are colonial languages, but access is very important to me. And so I am very much hoping that Dr. Elmi and his team will translate this very precious report so that I can go push and advocate in places where English is not being read. There's many Black Muslim people who speak French and who cannot speak English, who cannot read in English. And so that's one thing I really want us to work together in order to mobilize even strongly. I thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Edo, for your wonderful comments. We look forward to engaging you a little bit following the introduction of some of the other panelists. I'll just go very quickly to Ghaniyat Sadiq. Ghaniyat is an advocate who has been recognized as Alberta's top 30 under 30. She aims to establish substantial solutions to address growing political and social inequity through the facilitation of purposeful conversations with policymakers, institutions, and citizens. These interests reflect the IMX movement, a social community founded by Ghaniyat that seeks to raise awareness of the injustices Black, Indigenous, and racialized individuals face, as well as provide a safe space to share their experiences. She also co-founded and serves as the co-executive officer external of the Black Inclusion Association, a novel non-for-profit that aims to achieve equity and social justice for Black Albertans. Currently, Ghaniyat is a fifth-year student in the Honors Political Science program at the International Relations program at the University of Calgary. Ghaniyat, please feel free to share a little bit more about yourself and where you're coming today from.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm very honored to be here today. As mentioned, my name is Ghaniyat Sadiq, and a lot of my work just comes from my lived experiences and the communities that I'm very gracious to be a part of. So I'm just really excited for the conversation today. And I think this report is definitely like having the tangible facts that we can kind of walk up to people and show that, you know, there is huge disparities that we need to account for is something I'm really excited about. So thank you so much for inviting me for this conversation.
Thank you very much, Ghaniyat, for making time for us. We don't have Ibrahim Downey, so I think my last introduction here, certainly not least, is Fozia Douale Virtue. Fozia, with almost 10 years of experience as a community service worker and facilitator, Fozia is a highly skilled and resourceful professional with a career in supporting children, youth, and adults explore their potential for healing, resistance, and growth while interfacing with institutional systems. She's led a range of research, communications, and administrative projects with the Medenta Community Services, the Black Experience Project. Okay, all right, perfect. The Black and lead agency Strides Toronto. Additionally, she's also one of the first Somali-targeted youth outreach workers in the provincial program. As a trauma and healing informed practitioner, Fulgia is very experienced in dealing with domestic violence, human trafficking, immigration and settlement, youth justice and crisis intervention. She strives to provide a safe, non-judgmental and empathic space for all. Fulgia utilizes relational and cultural approaches driven by connection and community in much of her work. Fulgia holds a BA, specialization in sociology. When not at work, you can find her listening to podcasts, catching up with friends over a good meal, or keeping up with comedy specials. Fulgia is currently a workshop coordinator for the National Council of Canadian Muslims. Fulgia, we welcome you to this panel and invite you to share some further thoughts.
Alaikum, everybody, and hello. And thank you so much for having me on this panel. It really is an honor to be here. I was the last project coordinator for the Black Experience project. It was a 6-year study, and we were tasked with launching the results after 6 years of asking people what it meant to be Black in the GTA. And I think I keep circling back to work that is personal. As a Black Muslim woman, I care about Black Muslim issues, whether it's in social service spaces, whether it's in research, and really establishing roots or reviving roots, because Black Muslims have been here for 400 years. And it really is just the many ways in which we express ourselves in this land with dignity and the full range of our humanity that I'm very interested in. So thank you so much for giving me that opportunity to speak to that some more.
Thank you so much, Fozia, for those words. Again, apologies to those who are in attendance. We do not have with us our other panelists, Brother Ibrahim Downey, who I think would have been a tremendous addition to this conversation because of his life experience. Brother Ibrahim Downey has been a counselor for Black communities, for Muslim communities. He's worked in our jails and prisons for many years. He's been someone who has been interacting with individuals within this community at various levels for decades. And I think it would have brought a tremendously valuable perspective to a range of these topics. So I'm not going to say too much more other than to ask for some reflection initially, I'd say, from our panelists. I will go backwards if you don't mind this time. Fozia, rather. So I know there wasn't much time, unfortunately, for you guys to sort of go through the report and maybe in detail as much as you would have liked, and we apologize for that. But you did perhaps hopefully get a chance to take a look at some of the statistics and results of the survey and at least get a sense of some of the areas of challenges that are unique to the Black Muslim community. What in particular stands out to you about some of the things that you found in this report?
I think somebody mentioned it a little earlier, Black Muslim women. That really stood out to me on just the level of challenges that are before their path, but also some of the historical pieces. As I was reading the sections around education in particular, I was reminded about the different waves of refugees that had come to Canada, and some of the work that I have done centered mostly in the Somali community. So when those early waves in the late 80s and the 90s, where a sizable number of refugees were coming from East Africa, there were amendments made to immigration. Bill C-86 specifically amended for Somali refugees and Afghan refugees in particular, but the numbers later on, as Okazi captured it, saw that 90% of that amendment actually affected Somali women and East African women and children. And it left around 13,000 people just in legal limbo, You were neither landed, you were neither here nor there. And the rationale was, we're really trying to prevent immigration fraud, and you don't have an ID to show that you're a legitimate refugee. So although we can see the conflict on our TV screens, right? We don't know if you're a legitimate refugee, so you're going to be suspended in legal limbo. And most of those people didn't get any kind of status until the early 2000s. So for me, it was the historical pieces of dealing with one institution that might be bubbling up a story in education, in employment, even family configuration. I shouldn't have been surprised. I think I was disheartened to know that many Black Muslim women were reported as separated or divorced or leading households primarily on their own. And for me, it really brought up a number of questions on how these different interfacing with institutions negatively, where suspicion about your Blackness, suspicion of your Muslimness, and that you need to even declare that you are in fact a victim, a refugee, that you're coming here for asylum, was something that really stood out to me. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you very much, Fozia, for those thoughts. Laniat, hopefully you got a chance. I mean, you're in Edmonton, is that correct? Or
Calgary.
Calgary, I apologize. And of course, I mean, many of us here in Ontario and other parts of Canada are very much aware of some of the unique challenges that and experiences and very heinous accounts of attacks that Black Muslim women in particular have been facing out there. Outside of that, or perhaps you want to chat a little bit about that, what else in the report stuck out to you? And is there any sort of correlation between the work you've been doing and some of the data you find in this report?
Yeah, of course. I think, seeing the violence that a lot of Black Muslim women face, seeing it in the report, I think for me, I had kind of heard about it through like lived experience and hearing about it through my personal connections. So seeing it being put in the report kind of solidified that, this was very much a pattern. And for a long time, it felt like it was a pattern that nobody except Black Muslim women were speaking up about. So it felt like, not Black Muslim women only being the victims, but also having to bear like the burden of like advocating, trying to be like, is someone listening to us? This is a bigger issue. And I know being able to have those tangible numbers to be like, hey, this was a pattern. This is because people are seeing other people do these actions and there's no repercussions to these actions, was something that was not shocking, but it very much validated that, a lot of work needs to be done in that area. And I think another thing that really shocked me was kind of the report's talk actually about Black youth and their overrepresentation in high school suspensions and expulsions. Because I think they only made up 11% of the student population, but made up like around 36% was what the report was saying. So I think, with a lot of the work I do, I see a lot of institutional barriers that Black youth face from that transition from high school to post-secondary education. And then they're also being faced with, severe issues of discrimination and bias at a high school level. And then on top of that, having the more chances of being suspended, there's also the limitations of, the application fees for post-secondary education, and then also any financial constraints that people may have, just to be faced with Islamophobia and severe racism at an institutional level through what is being taught. I'm studying political science and international relations, and my specialization is in Africa. A lot of my courses have been taught by white professors. So kind of seeing the various layers that are playing into, I think Ariel was mentioning why Black Muslims kind of have, and the report also mentioned like the amount of educational certificates, like we're less likely to get them. And, there's a lot of barriers. It isn't just one thing. It's like these compounding factors that we kind of need to address. So that was really interesting. And I think the report did a great way of like highlighting these multiple facets that are leading to this bigger consequence.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that, Laniat. Ido, is there any thoughts that you'd like to share concerning your reading of the report?
Yes, so I really, because I'm doing research specifically regarding the experiences of Black Muslim women, I was also interested in general for Black Muslim people, what was the context, and I wouldn't say I was surprised at a lot of things, but it was very interesting to see that for Black Muslim populations, young people are very strong. It's a very strong group for us. The people who are from 0 to 14 years old is a very, very important group for Black Muslim people. And so that for me, it means lots of hope for the future, because there's young people coming up. And it also, for me, means that the programs need a focus. They need a focus for young people, because Black Muslim, the group that we call Black Muslim people, lots of young people, and we have to make sure to prepare the future, to coach them. So the programs and the funding regarding projects, initiatives, and supporting Black Muslim organizations, Black Muslim leadership, Black Muslim youth-led projects, to me, that it was clear to me that, supporting Black Muslim organizations so that they can support the youth that they know about was very, very important. Obviously, the situation for women and single motherhood, when we're reading the data, it is very clear that the realities related to single motherhood, being a Black single mother, is something that is very important to understand the socioeconomics of the families and the realities of young people, especially. When it came to, for example, disabilities, it was very clear that Black Muslim women are experiencing and living with disabilities more than men. And so that to me did not really come as a surprise, only because the research that I do regarding the realities affecting Black Muslim women, when we say disability, we're also talking about mental health matters. So, it's not just living in a wheelchair, it's also experiencing your mental health being affected by different things. And so the reasons why Black Muslim women are very much affected by disabilities is, what's their quality of life? We have to wonder, and there's research with a focus on Black Muslim women to better understand that. And so I felt like the report gave a really great lens, a really, really, really great lens on the realities that our communities are facing. And there's clear solutions within this report. It is very clear to me that you can find ways of, let's say, building programs and building projects and supporting the right organizations so that they can go in the adapted ways in communities and act accordingly. So I think really, truly, without being biased, this was a great report, and I am waiting for the French version so I can go and do my work.
Thank you very much for that. So I think that's a priority. I think oftentimes for those of us who live in English Canada, many of us who are in Ontario. So the report demonstrates that, in effect, the vast majority of Black Muslims live in Ontario and Quebec and Alberta. But we tend to not really understand the dynamics of Quebec very well, and the unique challenges and experiences, even the demographics of Black Muslims. I think the demographics of Black Muslims are somewhat different than in Quebec than they are in Ontario. Can you speak a little bit to the sort of the unique sort of demographics that exist perhaps in Quebec? I know you're in Montreal, so I don't know if you can speak more towards other areas of the province, but happy to hear a bit more about what you see in this report as it pertains to the unique experiences of Black Muslims in Quebec, as well as what role government might have in particular, the different levels of government in crafting solutions or addressing some of these challenges that are highlighted.
Yes, thank you for the question. Quebec is a very special place. It's a very special place. And what I can say is that Dr. Elmi, the team, the research is, the statistics are very telling. My expertise as a sociologist, I do statistics, I do the quantitative, quantitative, but I also do the qualitative. And the qualitative is very important to go profoundly in the matters and really understand the texture. Now, with the few minutes I have, I can give a little bit of texture for Quebec. Quebec, in the province of Quebec, French is a big focus. So the general white population is very, very fierce about respecting the French language. What does that mean for Black Muslim people? The legacy historically for Black Muslim people here in Quebec has been held by Black Muslim people who speak English. And so they are a minority within this province that they are evolving at an intersection that is quadruple for them, especially if they're Black Muslim women who speak English. That will put you in a very, very, very specific situation in Quebec. And so the advocacy work that I see that's being done, for example, heavily in Ontario by my peers who are Black Muslim, doing research, pushing for advocacy work that is very important. A lot of the important information, for example, for Black Muslim people, the key and very quality information is usually available in English. And so as professionals here are doing the work and are pushing for the great things, how do you advocate? How do you advocate in a context where the legacy was held by Black Muslim people historically, mostly by English-speaking people? There's a new generation of people, mostly people really truly in Quebec are bilingual. For Black people in general, bilingualism is the reality. When we step out of Quebec, obviously things are different. But in Quebec, most Black people are bilingual. Now, in the context of Islamophobia and the history, and I'll close on that, I think we should be having more of these conversations. Now, Quebec has very difficult relationships with, has a difficult relationship with religion because they divorced historically religion. And so Black Muslim people living proudly in their faith and exercising their human rights, wearing the hijab is exercising your human right. You are allowed to do that. There is clearly in Quebec a lack of understanding of the human rights for all. And there's a law, there's a clear law that doesn't allow for people to exercise their human rights in Quebec. And so obviously that will put Black Muslim people in a situation of resistance and of, let's say, when you're looking for a job, what happens for you? When you're looking to support your children in school and make sure they're great, how will people engage with you? Is there any funding available for Black Muslim groups, organizations? I'll give you a simple example. Femmes Noires Musulmanes au Québec was funded by a foundation based in Ontario. And that was the strategy for the organization we created. We were funded by people outside of our province because in the context of Quebec, it was not possible to see that you could fight for a greater cause and also identify as Muslim. And so we went outside and we did the great work supported by other people outside of the province. Now, I'll leave it at that. I promise if you invite me again, in conversation, but the context is very complex, and it really we really depend, and I use that word very rarely, but Black Muslim people in Quebec, we truly depend on the solidarities of Black Muslim people all around the country. we are really, really depending on that to be able to move. That's how I was able to move. And so, you know, let's stay in conversation.
Thank you so much for that, Ido. But I'll just point out that there's a question that's in the chat that is directed towards you. You can maybe take a quick look at that. Very quickly, Felicia, if you can sort of give us some perspective, you think, on how government or maybe even private sector or other sectors of society might be critical linchpins towards addressing some of these challenges. What thoughts would you have to share on that?
I would say in three major ways. I think those of us who do a lot of community building and community work are constantly confronted with this challenge of providing evidence-based next steps, evidence-based action plans. And so a report like this gives us that. So thank you. We have data to substantiate a rationale for projects that are going to impact those who are affected, those who are most vulnerable, right? So curating programs that are directed at Black Muslim youth, Black Muslim women in the avenues of entrepreneurship, in the avenues of leadership. The fact that, I mean, I was mentioning earlier about Black Muslim women leading households. That's leadership, right? So exploring programming directed at Black Muslim women who are single mothers on the leadership skills that are already present in their lives and in being heads of their households, and how do we transfer that in spaces that empower them income-wise, right? So really this data for me is like a treasure trove. Because oftentimes the pushback that you get from institutions is like, well, we don't really know. This is all anecdote. This is all people who've told you stories about themselves. But how do we know that this is a common thread over hundreds, if not thousands of people saying the same thing? So thank you. In addressing harm as well, a number of other speakers spoke to the fact of Black Muslim communities being targeted in very compounding ways. That's certainly something that I've been involved with for a little while now. And this idea that anti-Black Islamophobia, this compounded reality where your Blackness and Muslimness is not easily accepted, that you somehow need to explain that that is a very fluid and natural reality within my existence, and I don't need to explain that to you if it's disrupting whatever matrix that you are plugged into, and that it has always been like for 400 years. We just have different revivals of different communities coming to this land, but I do not have to explain how Blackness and Muslimness exists within me. If I do, you're in need of some cultural competency training. Sorry, the lights go off if I don't move in this room. Increasing this cultural awareness and cultural competency that is coming from the diverse voices of Black communities. We are not a monolith. We're coming from 300 separate ethnic groups. We have various ways and interests in which we've expressed our Islam. We're coming from different denominations. We're interested in a variety of different areas of occupation. So counteracting something that I often see is that the Black Muslims are, you know, the newcomer experience, or the Black Muslim experience is this ethnic group's experience, or the Black Muslim experience is one only intersecting with harm, right? These single narratives that are entrapping, and then we spend so much energy just fighting the narrative. Let's continue doing that. We need to be the ones to put in the narratives that are reflective of our humanity, but ensuring that there are funders, institutions, systems in place that put their audiences there so we can tell them and train them on how to dignify us and how we want to be received, right? So those are some ideas that I have.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Pooja. Lanyet, very quickly, I mean, some of your thoughts in terms of how to you know, critically action some of these areas that have been highlighted within the report, and you know, what type of focus would you want to see placed on what's been identified?
Yeah, of course. I think in terms of critical action, first of all, listening. I mean, it's one thing to have the report. There has to be spaces where we can go and people are actually receptive to finding these learnings and, trying to investigate why these disparities exist. And I think, we've touched about Islamophobia existing. I think we also need to critically assess racism within the Muslim community. This work cannot be done without addressing the huge role that anti-Blackness racism plays in the Muslim community, because, we talk about being Black Muslims, we talk about being a Black Muslim woman, and, a huge part of that harm, a huge part of that hurt comes from, feeling neglected within the Muslim community or not being accepted within that community. So I think definitely having a lot of our Muslim spaces trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do based on these findings? How are we going to make sure that we're supporting our Black Muslims? I'm assuming most people are Muslim, or a lot of people are Muslims in this chat, but we talk about, being an ummah, being a community, and we need to figure out, if there's Black Muslims that are facing these things, how are we going to make sure that within the Muslim community, we're addressing those? And I think in terms of a spotlight of like one thing to focus on, I think all of it, it's all interlinked. You can't talk about the educational piece without talking about how being a single household impacts that, so there's so many layers to these bigger issues, but I think figuring out, okay, what actionable small things that we can do. So is it about, I think Fozia was talking of very great work, very great things that can be done, and like having the little workshops for like, Black Muslim entrepreneurs, catering to different avenues that you're reducing one barrier at a time. I think, with seeing all this data, you're like, wow, there's so many barriers that people are facing. I don't even know where to start. You got to start, with the chisel, start chipping away at it slowly. So figuring out how can we address, the financial constraints that Black Muslims are facing towards trying to get into post-secondary? How can we address the fact that Black students are getting expelled in Ontario, trying to starting from those small scale actions will kind of lead to a bigger action in the future, I believe.
Okay, thank you so much for that. We're a little bit over time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just ask you all to sort of let people know how they can get in touch with you and learn more about your work and support your work. So Idil, perhaps you can go first.
So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's the best way to find me, with my full name that you see on the flyer that the organization created. I would gladly be in touch. And I thank you. Thank you for having me.
Fozia?
I'll put my email in the chat. You can find.
I think she's frozen.
Particularly interested in anti-Black Islamophobia work that we do. It's definitely an area of focus that was within my portfolio and that I'm excited about.
Thank you very much. And Gania?
Yeah, I can be found on LinkedIn and Instagram at just Gania Sadiq. And yeah, I'm sure my email as well can be shared. I think right now we can only send messages to the host and panelists, but I will put my email down as well if that can be shared.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, all of you, for participating. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Elmi. But as we do, as Muslims do, typically when they end any kind of gathering, we make a dua, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. So Dr. Elmi, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Kofi for your leadership in getting this report started. I'd like to thank so many people who were not on this Zoom link. First of all, Nancy Mitchell, who led this project from the Diversity Institute side, Victoria Austin, Dryden Steves, as well as Dr. Wendy Sukier, the founder and academic director of the Diversity Institute. There's so many people who put together this report and put this event together that I'd just like to acknowledge. And if I did not mention, it's an error on my side. And just thank you so much to the panelists as well for this enlightening discussion. I hope all of you have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Mohammed, quickly, I want to also say my personal thanks to Nancy Mitchell. She was the one at the Diversity Institute that we worked very closely with on this. day in, day out. I know she was supervised by your team and everybody at the Diversity Institute, but she was an excellent person to work with on this report, and someone we really want to thank for the work she's done for this community.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.